Hello, welcome 5e players. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to play D&D 3.5. My name is Mitch, and let's get into this. All right, so how to play D&D 3.5 for 5e players. Our table of contents. Why should you play D&D 3.5 over 5e? Character sheet page 1. Character sheet page 2. Prestige classes and subclasses. That's a very big important difference there. You have feats and ability score improvements. These are definitely different. You have armor class differences and saving throws. And in addition, you also have skills, bonus types. There's different types of bonuses. How combat works. It's mostly the same, but there's some differences. Death. That's a very different function in 3.5. The way death is handled is much different and much more brutal. 5e is very forgiving. It's kind of hard to actually die in 5e. In 3.5, it's much easier. Breaking the game. As you may or may not be aware, it can be very easy, but we'll get into that. A good DM can stop it. And resources. So that is what we are going to be covering. So let's get into it. All right, so why should you play 3.5 over 5e? I mean, you're already playing 5e. Why should you play 3.5? There's more character customization options. That's a pretty good reason right there, I'd say. There's a lot of different options for character customization. Hundreds of prestige classes. So instead of having your subclasses where you've got maybe a dozen or so at best, you have hundreds of prestige class options. And we'll talk more about that because there's way more customization with that. You can take multiple prestige classes in 3.5. This is very much a thing, whereas you can't take multiple subclasses, at least not in the same base class in 5e. So that's very restrictive. Generally, it's better if you could take both. So yeah, there's a lot of weird rules and restrictions, and it's extraordinarily complicated, but you can do it. There's also no 3 magic item attunement limit. Yeah, that's kind of a big thing. You can have, I think there's 12 different magic item slots, and there's ways of making each magic item slot have multiple, potentially infinitely many different effects on it. And yeah, so there's really no limit to how many magic items you can have. They just get slightly more expensive if you go over the 12. You have greater skill customization. With the way skills work in 3.5, you have a lot more control over what you're good at and what you're not versus 5e. We'll get into that. And then a larger selection of magic items. So in addition to being able to use more magic items, the list is just bigger. Magic items is just a much bigger part of 3.5 than it is in 5e. So you just have a lot more control over how you want your character to turn out. So let's look at the D&D 3.5 character sheet. So a couple of things that you want to note: flat-footed AC and touch AC. So you have flat-footed and touch AC instead of just your regular AC. Now your touch AC is the AC for when you're getting attacked by a spell that it really doesn't matter if you have armor or not, you know? Somebody's going to hit you with something, and if it hits your armor, it hits your armor. It's still going to work. So your armor and your shield aren't going to matter because blocking doesn't help against this particular thing. So that's your touch AC. And then there's your flat-footed AC. And this is for when you're caught by surprise. Like, I don't know, you're going to be hit by a sneak attack from a rogue. This would be when you'd have flat-footed. So here your dex isn't going to matter. And there's other things that are affected by it as well, but those are the main and most common ones. Over here, you'll see your saving throws. You see you only have Fortitude, Reflex, and Will. There are no other saving throws, just those 3. You don't have one for all your stats, just these 3. Fortitude is based off of Constitution, Reflex is based off of Dexterity, and Will is based off of Wisdom. Don't think you can actually read that. It's pretty blurry, but I have it memorized. Because I can't even read it. But yeah, I've been playing a long time. It's not that hard to remember. So yeah, and then you have skill ranks. See this whole giant section of this character sheet? Yeah, this is all for skills. It's not just as simple as checking a box. No, you have to put in ranks. And with that, you can choose how good you want to be at a skill. Do you want to be extremely overpowered at a couple skills by medium to high levels? Then awesome. Do it. Do you want to balance things out and be okay at a bunch of stuff by medium to high levels? You can do that as well. You can choose how good you want to be at stuff because you get various different skill points. So yeah, you get a lot of different options. A lot of the other stuff's pretty similar. Grapple, I think, is mostly the same. The attacks are mostly the same. Speed's going to be mostly the same. Alignment's mostly the same, although it has a bigger weight in 3.5. Now let's look at the second page of the character sheet. Here you have your magic items. As I said, you can have a lot more. There are about 12 different slots. This particular sheet isn't the best at showing that, but yeah, you have feats. Now, a thing with feats is, we'll talk about feats, but you do get them every 3 levels. More for certain classes, and humans get an extra one at first level. You don't have to choose between that and ability score. We'll get into that though. And spells, you list them all there. That's super complicated, but it's mostly the same as 5e. So yeah, but there's not too much difference between this page and 5e. But there are some. Magic items is probably the most notable. Let's look at the difference between prestige classes and subclasses. So, subclasses in 5e, there's dozens of options. So you want to be a fighter, you go through all your source books, and between all the source books, you might see a dozen or 2 different options. Yeah, there's thousands of different options for prestige classes. Some of them aren't going to be relevant to what you want. In fact, most of them aren't. But you can find something that's going to work, and you can really customize things. It's pretty nice. And you can also mix and match. So you can take several different fighter prestige classes. Just take a few levels in one, a few levels in another. Mix and match however you see fit. Whereas in 5e with their subclasses, once you pick a subclass for fighter, you're stuck with it. You can't mix and match. You kind of just gotta stick with the one you got. If you want a multi-class, you can take a different class, but you can't take a different fighter subclass. So that's a thing. And in 5e, you can only make okay characters. They're not going to be amazing, but they'll be all right, I guess. Whereas in 3.5, multi-classing is amazing. You can make extremely good characters, and you're almost certainly going to want to multi-class and to customize your character. Because 1, it makes you better, and 2, it makes you more unique and makes you be able to get the builds you actually want and not just something that's kind of close. Now, one downside is you can't enter your prestige class till around 6th level. There's ways of entering earlier. Some are 5. There's ways of getting in at level 4 on some. There's ways of using things in order to get into prestige classes earlier and using some prestige classes to get into others. There's a whole complicated mess with that, but it's around 6th level when you enter. Whereas in 5e, it's around 3rd level, which again, I know that's not a hard rule. Some it's 1st, some it's 2nd. It really depends, but most of them it's 3rd, but a couple of them you get it a little earlier. So those are the main differences. I could probably do a whole video on the differences between those, but that's the basics of it. So next we have feats and ability score improvements. So in 3.5, you get a feat every 3 levels or HD. You also get an ability score increase every 4 levels / HD. So that's hit dice. Same thing as levels. There's certain things that will affect that, like you can have racial hit dice, so effectively levels in a race. But yeah, for the most part, it's just going to be levels. You don't have to choose between them. You get both. So every 3 levels, you get a feat. Every 4 levels, you get an ability score improvement. It's not one or the other every 3 levels like it is in 5e. No, you get a feat every 3, and you get an ability score improvement every 4. Some classes give you more feats, and some races give you more, like human, but everybody gets this much. Now, let's look at some differences in AC. We already talked about flat-footed and touch AC. Those are definitely important things to keep in mind, that they exist, and sometimes your AC is going to be lower because somebody's trying to hit you with something that goes through armor, and other times your AC is going to be lower because, you weren't paying attention. So like this guy here with his big heavy armor. If someone with a spell that goes through armor, well, it's probably not going to be hard to hit this guy. He's probably not very dexterous by looking at him, especially with the fact that maximum dexterity is a thing with armor. It isn't going to be a thing, which isn't going to be something that's very high for him. But if he's caught off guard, if he's just kind of chilling, not paying attention, all of a sudden someone tries to sneak attack him, this guy's probably not going to get hit. Look at all that armor. He doesn't need to be paying attention to avoid taking damage with that. Now, there's also armor check penalties. So on a number of skills, wearing heavy armor is going to make it harder to do those skills, like jumping. If you're wearing heavy armor, it's harder to jump. If you're wearing heavy armor, it's harder to tumble. There's various other ones. Swim is actually double armor check penalties. So whatever your armor check penalties are, you take double that if you try and swim. And I think there's additional ones for the weight as well, because turns out swimming in heavy armor is extremely difficult. There's also maximum dexterity, as I was saying before. So, if you're wearing big heavy armor like this, the highest dexterity that you can use for AC purposes, as well as a few other purposes, is going to be for something like that. 0 or 1 for other armor, it'll be higher. For like a chain shirt, I think it allows up to a 4 dex. Other lighter armors allow for more, but it's kind of restricting. You can only move around so much inside big bulky armor. The lighter the armor, the easier it is to move around, and certain materials like mithril make it easier. There's also spell failure. So when you're in this big heavy armor, it's hard to make precise movements. And when you're casting arcane spells, you need to make these very precise movements for the majority of your spells. Anything with somatic components, which is most of them. So whenever you're trying to cast these spells, well, there's going to be a chance that you'll fail, and that's going to be listed on your armor. So you just got to keep that in mind. Now, another thing, saving throws. Now you have a Fortitude, a Reflex, and a Will save. Those are the 3 saving throws you have. They're going to be increased based on both class levels, Con, Dex, and Wisdom. So Fortitude will be based off of Con, Reflex will be based off of Dex, and Will be based off of Wisdom. And each class is going to give increases to your saving throws. It's not just you have proficiency with a saving throw. No, you have a varying number which can fluctuate wildly, which can make it so that you're either really good or really bad. At high levels, certain saves can be something you're almost guaranteed to succeed every time. Or maybe your saves aren't very good and you're not succeeding very often. Or maybe there's one of them that you succeed on all the time and almost never fail, whereas others you do have to risk failing. So it really depends on your character. Like, the reason why I picked the monk here is the monk has all good saving throws, but no other class does. But that's why there's a picture of a monk, because when it comes to saving throws, monks are the best. And another difference between this and 5e is there is no strength, intelligence, or charisma saves. There just aren't those saves. You don't need to worry about those for saving throws. There's nothing that requires a save for that. There might be some weird specific spells that have you do saves that are based off of strength, int, or charisma instead, but those are extremely rare. All right, and now skills. So you have your choice of skill ranks added at each level. So every single level, you are going to be able to add a number of skill points. Various different classes add different amounts. Rogues are the most. I think it's 8 plus intelligence. Everybody gets so many plus intelligence of how many skill points they get every level, and they can just add them into whatever skill they want. Now, you don't have proficiency with skills. You have class skills or cross-class skills. Certain skills are class skills for certain classes and not for others. If it's a class skill, you can get 1 point for 1 rank. If it's a cross-class skill, you have to pay twice as much. You can also only get your skills up half as high. It's less good. You spend the same amount and get half as much benefit, and you also can't get as good. And that's kind of how they manage proficiencies with this. But you have to pick which ones. So like the rogue, you got to pick which skills you want to go into. He has a lot of different options. Skills are very common for him. Rogue is it's the most skillful class in the player's handbook, unless you count clerics with whatever domain you want. But aside from that, rogues are the most skillful. There are some others that are super good, like the factotum, but anywho, the rogue is very, very good. So yeah, that's how skills work. You can put however many you want, so you don't have to put the max ranks in. You can spread them out and make it so that you're decently good at a lot of things instead of just really good at one thing. Or you can make it so you're just really good at a couple of things. I mean, you get a number plus intelligence, and what you can do is you can just choose that many skills and just be max ranks in all of those. That's the quick and dirty way to do it. I often do it that way. It's not a bad option, but you can also spread things out. But it does work out that however many skills that you get, so 2+int for some classes, some it's like 8+int. You look at however much it is, you see what that works out to. Add 1 if you're human, and just pick that many skills and max them out. Max ranks is 3+ level for class skills and half that for cross class. Yeah, you can just max that however many skills you want, or however many skills you can, or you can mix and match. It's up to you. Anywho, but yeah, that allows for a much greater customization. You don't just have to pick a couple of skills and max them out. You can mix them around. In fact, if you're going into prestige classes, you may have to in order to qualify for prestige classes. Because one thing I didn't mention before about prestige classes is they all have requirements to get in. You're going to have to make sure you meet those requirements. That's why you can't get in at level 2, because you have to meet these requirements. Now, or you also can't get it at level 1. You have to take a base class at level 1. So, because you literally don't qualify for anything at level 1. You have nothing. But anyways, I was talking before about there being different types. There's various different types. Same types do not stack. And for ability types, there's extraordinary, supernatural, spell-like. For bonus types, like basically there's things like, so you can get a circumstance bonus. You can get a enhancement bonus. You can get, there's a whole bunch of different types of things. So many, but they don't stack for the most part. Some do, most don't. You can get dodge bonus. You can get all sorts of different stuff. Dodge actually does stack, but most don't. Now, combat. Let's look at some of the big differences in combat. First off, there's no advantage. That doesn't exist in 3.5. No advantage, no disadvantage, just not a thing. Hadn't been invented yet. It's a good idea. I like that about 5e, but it's just not a thing in 3.5. Instead, you typically will get bonuses. Like for flanking, you don't get advantage for flanking. You get a +2 on your roll for flanking. That's what you get. Would advantage be better? Yeah, probably. But no one had thought of that yet. It is what it is on that one. Now and same with a disadvantage. You just take a minus. You just take like a -4 or -2 penalty or whatever it happens to be. So there's no disadvantage. You just roll at a penalty. All right. So now let's talk about action economy. That's super important in D&D 3.5. That's how you get good at it. There's a certain degree of it in 5e as well. And a lot of this does apply, but there are different types of actions. There are standard actions. There are full round actions. There are move actions. And there are swift actions. There aren't bonus actions. Bonus actions are effectively swift actions. They're equivalent, more or less. Then you have your standard and your move action, which are mostly the same with full round actions. I think that's all the same, but you have swift actions instead of bonus actions, which you only get 1 of per turn. Now, a swift action also counts as an immediate action. They both take the same time slot, but an immediate action can be used on someone else's turn. Gets a little complicated on that one. If you use an immediate action, you can't, on the previous turn, you can't use a swift action on your turn. So there's that. Yeah, there's various different stuff. There's also, if you cast a spell that's a full round action, it won't come out till the next turn. That's just a thing in 3.5. And if you happen to take damage, then you'll have to make a concentration check or drop the spell, which, as I was saying before, your concentration can be very high. So you just make it by, can be 3+ level plus constitution. It can be a pretty high number. And the check is like 10+ damage. So, and you get to roll a d20 as well. So yeah, combat maneuvers, that's something that you can do. Strictly speaking, that refers to stuff from the Tome of Battle. But there's a bunch of like skills you can use in combat, like tumble and jump and various things like that, that are going to provide various benefits in combat. There's also charging, which gives a +2 and lets you attack and move, although there's all sorts of rules for that. Mostly just that nothing can be blocking your line, including allies. So there's that. Spell casting, as I was saying, there's that whole thing with full round actions. So if you start summoning on your turn, the summon won't actually come out till the next turn. Now you still get your turn, but it won't come out till the next turn. So yeah, which makes it so that if you're casting a long spell, there's ways for your opponents to interrupt the spell. So if you see somebody casting a spell, you can try and stop it if it's got a full round or longer. Now, as I was saying before, death. is very different. It's much easier to die in 3.5. So watch out for that. I think it adds more to the game to make it so that the fear of death is a lot more real. Although at high levels it starts to go away in any system, but or even like mid levels around like level 7, the fear of death starts to decay. But by high levels it's gone. But early levels it's super real, and it's still a threat at higher levels. It's just much less permanent. But there are no death saves. So if you die, it's not like, oh, I am now unconscious and now I have to make death saves. No, you're just unconscious and you're at negative health. So once you reach negative 1 HP, this starts. 0 is actually weird in 3.5. So at 0, you're actually still conscious and sort of able to do stuff. The 0 is a weird one. So if you take any sort of strenuous action, so if you take any standard actions that aren't just really simple, then you'll lose on HP if you're at 0. But you can move, but yeah, you can't do anything strenuous or else you'll lose 1 HP. But you are still conscious, and if you lose 1 HP, you drop to negative 1 and become unconscious and are dying. And when you're dying, every time it's your turn, you have to roll percent dice. If you roll a 1 through a 90, then you lose 1 HP, and you have to roll again next turn. If you roll a 91 through 100, you stabilize. And then, so you have a 10% chance to stabilize. And this is, wherever you happen to fall. So if you take damage to drop you to negative 1, negative 5, negative 7, wherever that is, you're starting from there. So the closer you are to negative 10, the more likely you are to die. So there's that, because you only have a 10% chance of stabilizing each turn, and every turn you don't, you lose 1 HP. So that's nasty. And once you reach negative 10, you're just dead. You can be healed during that time, just like you can in 5e. But yeah, it's a much stricter window. And that's hard negative 10, regardless of what your level is. It's not a double your HP. No, it's negative 10. So if you have 200 HP and you take 210 damage, you're dead. Yeah, if you have 200 HP and you take 210 damage, you're dead. No saves, you're just dead. Whereas in 5e, of course, you're making saves. So yeah, it's much easier to kill at higher levels. So it's kind of weird how that ends up working out. Yeah, the negative 10, the strict negative 10 is kind of weird. But that is how it works. And even if you stabilize, you're not out of the woods. You just don't have to make a save for a little bit. I think it's every minute you have to make a save now, or you lose 1 HP. And then even if you pull that one off, you still have to make one, I think, every hour. And then if you finally pull that off, then you'll start healing. I forget the exact specifics, but yeah, you have to pull it off a few times in order to actually heal on your own. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to die. So if someone drops to negative health and is dying, it's very unlikely that if untreated, they will come to. Now, there's a decent chance they'll stabilize enough so that somebody after the combat can come and heal them, no problem. But there's a very real chance that if you're just left there to die, you will die. Now let's talk about breaking the game. So there's a lot of rumors out there about breaking the game and how D&D 3.5 is super broken and you can just kill gods at level 2 and all sorts of crazy stuff. And that's not completely unfounded. There's a reason why I have a kobold as the picture. It's how you do it using Pun, who is a kobold. It's a whole thing. But yes, it can be easy to break if you know how, but a good DM can stop you from doing that and just say, yeah, that game-breaking thing doesn't work. I'm not going to allow that in my game. Almost no DM worth their salt will allow Pun in a game. There are reasons for allowing it, and I can tell you what those reasons are. One, you have a one-shot that is just going to be ridiculous. You're just making a ridiculous one-shot where you want the players to be killing gods. Okay, cool. Let everybody play Pun. Fine, that works. You want to have some sort of game where the whole point is to to fight like the super high level gods, like the DM. If you want to have like a player versus DM actual fight where you're just making the craziest stuff up you can as the DM, and the players are just brokenly overpowered, stupid characters where things just get beyond wild, yeah, letting Pun Pun in is a good reason for that. And the other reason is your DM is really bad at their job. And they just let him in when they really shouldn't have. Those are the only reasons why your DM would let Pun Pun in. And really, your DM would have to be pretty bad to let him in for other reasons. So yeah, this lets you choose the power level of the game, which is really big. So as I was saying, with Pun Pun, if you want a ridiculous campaign, let Pun Pun in. Let everybody be a Pun Pun. If you aren't doing that crazy, but you want a pretty high-powered game, yeah, let people min-max and have some really stupid, powerful characters. And then you just throw stupid power enemies at them and everything works out. Or you can not allow any of this min-maxing and keep the game level low. It's not that hard to control if you know what you're doing, and it doesn't take too much know-how to figure out. It does allow you to control the power of the game, which I think is really important. And finally, let's look at the resources we have available for 3.5. This is just what's out there in the world for it. So first off, there's the Giants in the Playground. It's a great website. They also have a Discord server. It's not actually official, but it's loosely affiliated. The owners are different, but anyways, yeah, it's largely the same crowd. Now there is this website here, D&D. I'm not even sure what all that says, but it's D&D tools. I use it all the time. Although I mostly just Google it and find what I'm looking for, but I end up on this website a lot from Google. Then there's the D20 SRD. It's a pretty good website right there. Then, of course, this is a link to my Discord, which will be linked in the description below, or you could type it out, I guess, if you if you're watching on TV or something and can't look at the description. That's it right there. Another thing you can do is you could subscribe to the channel and, watch videos, because I make a ton of videos about D&D 3.5 teaching you how to play the game. So that's a way to learn about the game, is watch my channel, or you can just Google D&D 3.5 and then usually just go D&D 3.5 and then whatever it is you're looking for, just started off with D&D 3.5. That is how to play D&D 3.5 for 5e players. Anyways, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I always love hearing from you. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like. Subscribe to the channel for more D&D 3.5 content and to learn how to play this amazing game. Down in the description below there is links to my Discord and to my Twitch, because I do stream on Twitch. But anyways, as always, I'm Mitch. I'll be seeing you